how do you feel like you can do this and take this step and like not really be afraid? And the only way you can really do that is through reps. And you're still gonna be afraid, but courage is actually the best skill to learn in this area, because it's like, despite being fearful, you're still being courageous and taking that next step. And it's unreasonable to say that you're not going to be afraid, because fear is always there, and fear is also there to protect you. Fear is also there to keep you in that comfort zone, which is safer, arguably, in different ways, even if it's not healthy. And so building that courage is just like, even though I'm scared, even though I don't really want to do it, I'm going to do it.
Welcome to Parents and Teens Rising, the podcast that bridges the gap between parents and teens and helps families thrive. I'm Jasmine Chandler, teen and parent coach, wilderness rites of passage guide, and founder of Guided Passages. After over 16 years of working with young people, I know how challenging and rewarding these years can be. Each week, we'll explore real conversations, practical tools, and fresh perspectives to help you connect with your teen, support their confidence, and navigate the ups and downs. Let's rise together. Hey everyone, welcome into the podcast. I have something really exciting to share with you today. I am inviting my first guest onto Parents and Teens Rising. Her name is Sonia Suthar, and she is a 19-year-old entrepreneur who is already putting some amazing work out into the world. Sonia is the founder of Cloud9 and an educator focused on teen emotional and identity development. Through workshops, group programs, and speaking engagements, she helps adolescents build emotional awareness, communication skills, and confidence while supporting parents in better understanding the patterns that often drive teen behavior. Sonia's work centers on bridging the gap between how teens experience themselves internally and how adults interpret their actions externally, with the goal of strengthening connection, resilience, and real-world readiness in young people. We had such an amazing conversation, and I can't wait to share it with you. You're going to leave with some real gems for your parenting journey and to share with your teenagers. So let's go ahead and dive in. All right. Hello, Sonia. I am so excited to have you here. Welcome in. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you today. So I thought where I could start is just to open it up and let you introduce yourself, who you are, a little bit about your background, and maybe what you're most passionate about right now.
Yeah, totally. So as Jasmine said, my name is Sonia. I'm 19 years old, and I just graduated from high school last May. So I'm first time going into college, living on my own, and I'm really passionate about helping guide teenagers, and also on the other side, helping parents support their teenagers in the way that they need best. So kind of giving a voice to the teenagers, and then also helping the parents on that perspective.
Oh, it's so awesome. Well, and I also understand that you are actually the founder of a company that's called Cloud9. And so I'm really curious to learn more about that and kind of just what inspired that work and what you do there and all of that.
Yeah, totally. So yes, I am the founder of Cloud9. It's a company that I started when I was in high school, and then I kind of stopped for a little bit because, to be honest, I got really nervous and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. But I came back to it and I was like, I really want to do it. And essentially what it is we give teens, we provide them with life skills in an interactive way on Zoom, and then it's like group community style. So then we also provide them with a community so teens feel like they belong, and also parents know that they're supported by a healthy community, not like making friends out of convenience, but like a really good community who's growth oriented. And then lastly, we have real world opportunities. And this is something that I'm adding in to the end of it, of like, if this student, let's say, wants to learn about finance and they want to get exposure for that, then they would be able to like intern at different startups. So then they actually have that exposure and they're able to try things out they would normally be able to do. So I want it to be a global movement of we are helping teens. And then on the other side, and the most beautiful thing about Cloud9 is we aren't just sticking with like one audience, we're doing both. And I had a tough relationship with my parents, so I get it. Like, everyone is going through it. There's no perfect way to do it. And so, on the other side, we help parents by hosting group sessions with not just me, but like a parent coach who gets it from that perspective of like, we're going through like a 20, 30-minute session of like, here's a tip that you can use with your children, and then a Q&A session. So you can really just get personalized feedback on like what actually to do and then get two perspectives on it.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I mean, that, to me, that sounds so incredible as a 19-year-old to have, put this all together because basically you came up with this idea, you've created this from the ground up, it sounds like, and then you've brought in people to assist and all of the things. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Thank you.
Okay. So, well, what inspired you to do this work? And I'm just curious, like, were there some personal experiences that, made teen development your personal calling, like why you want to help other teens?
Yeah, so from a young age, like my dad always was like into personal growth. He was very growth oriented. And so like to do anything, like to get like money and things like that, he would be like, okay, read 10 books on personal growth and then give us a book report on it. And so that's just like ingrained from a young age. And then to really start Cloud9, I had always known that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't really get to do it until I went to this high school called Alpha in Austin, Texas, and we were actually really supported to make businesses. And that's when I was like, okay, what am I going to do? What kind of business? And my dad was like bringing me through these three questions, the ikigai, where it's like, what do you love to do? And I love teaching, I love to hang out with my best friends, and I love to travel. And then he was like, okay, what are you good at? And I was pretty good at teaching because I just had that like comprehension of what like good life skills are and then that business mindset. And then what does the world need? And the world needs like students to know life skills that aren't necessarily taught in schools or really supported by colleges at the moment. And they also need community. They also need really good, supportive people around them that they feel like they belong. And that's something that really hits home for me because I didn't feel like I had that until I like went and searched for it in specific communities. But
Hmm.
like it wasn't just like made for community. And so it was still hard to maintain that. And so that's kind of how Cloud9 came together.
Wow. It sounds like you had some amazing supports in place, like with this school, and then also your parents too, that kind of helped to establish some foundational pieces for you as well. And then your own
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurial spirit and that internal motivation and drive that kind of got you going too. Okay, that's amazing. I love hearing that. Okay, so you founded a company and started speaking on stages as a teenager. That's actually one of the first things I saw that you put out was a TED Talk, which I was so impressed by. Um, and what did your own confidence journey look like, and what helped you to bet on yourself at such a young age?
Yeah, my own confidence journey was tough. Like, as a teenage girl living in this day and age, especially with the rise of social media, it was really hard to like deal with comparison and like wanting to be like the perfect person and look the perfect way. But then there is really no perfect person and there is really no definition of like how to look perfectly. And so I was a very insecure child and I hated to public speak. And my dad, like, over and over, like, just kept guiding me and putting me in these camps, which really, like, got me out of my comfort zone, but I really hated it at the same time. Like, I remember, like, one of the camps that I did during summer was, like, a public speaking camp, and at the end of it, you had to create your own speech. And my dad practically created the entire speech for me, but I had to, like, read it off and do it, and it was so scary. But it was fun because he added this part at the beginning, which was, like, a hook of, like, say I if you like Starbursts, like candy, and like all the kids were like, yes, I like Starburst, and so I would give one to every single one like in my speech, and so that was like the fun like, oh okay, I could do something to create rapport and then like do it. And so that's kind of like how I got like more confidence, just like doing it over and over again, right? Having those
Mhm.
reps. And then also knowing that the only people who really matter are my support system and myself. And if I want to do it, then I really can't be afraid of what other people think because if I want to create something, I'm going to like deal with a lot of people who are going to be like, oh. that's weird, or like having negative comments. But I really just had to stay true to myself for that.
Hmm. Yeah. And remember that you had a solid foundation with your support system already. So whatever they said, it didn't matter as much because you had that to fall back on. Yeah.
Exactly. I was already loved with the people who mattered the most.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Thank you. Okay, let's see here. So you talk about bridging the gap between how teens experience themselves internally and how adults interpret their behavior externally. So I'm wondering if you can give an example of what that gap looks like in real life and how you're helping to bridge that with your work.
Yeah. I kind of talked about this in my TED Talk of like, wow, if parents are like, you can't go to the party, then teens are like internally like, okay, you don't trust me. You don't think that I'm like worthy enough to like do this on my own. Like, I'm not good enough kind of thing. Because they're internalizing and they're thinking in this way of like, you don't believe me. And it's the biggest thing is like, you don't trust me. And this like goes along with like, let's say a kid is had a hard day and the parent comes in and is like, hey, like, how's your day? And then the kid decides to be like honest and is like, hey, like, I had a really tough day, like I failed my exam. And then the parent's immediately like, oh, like, did you get enough sleep? Like, did you study enough? Blah blah blah, like all these different things. And the kid's like, I was honest with you and I was vulnerable with you, but now I'm kind of afraid to like be supported in the way that I want to be supported because when I was honest with you the first time, you just went into fix mode, and that's not what I needed at that moment. That's not what I wanted. And something to do, like, instead of that is, like, asking them, like, hey, like, thank you for sharing that, validating, like, what they're saying, and then being, like, asking them this question. And I call it the 3 H's of, do you want to be heard, helped, or held? And this is so powerful because the parent knows how to support their teen in the way that they need it the most, but then the teen also is forced to reflect and build that emotional intelligence skill of like, how do I need to be supported? What is most valuable for me in this moment? And that they can take with them for like for lifetimes. It's so important.
Yeah. I mean, that's just so huge. I found that so much on my own parenting journey too. I mean, everything really changed for me in my relationship with my kids once I stopped being
Mm-hmm.
like the big fixer, like I have all the answers and I have all the things that you should be doing and all of that. And so just really opening that space whenever they come to me of like, wow, that sounds really hard. Thanks for sharing that. And then if they want more, they can ask for more, or I can ask them if they want some extra support. But without jumping in, I've really helped to open that doorway to more connection and more sharing, which is amazing because that's ultimately what we want as parents is that we want to have these relationships with our kids where they want to come to us in those moments and share these things that are on their heart versus like either holding it inside or having to find someone else outside of the parental relationship to go to vent to or to, have that validated or supported in another way. So I love that.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree. And like it's just that also that like part and you said it really well of just like, wow, that was really hard. Because sometimes even now, even like doing so like my parents and I have such a good relationship, sometimes I do wish that they would just be like, oh, that's so exciting. And then they like, because sometimes they're like, oh, but have you thought about this, this, and this? And I'm just like, I was bringing it good news to you, and now you're like thinking about all these other like factors that yes, they're important, but I just wanted that like love and excitement towards whatever I was bringing to them. So I really like that.
Yeah, totally. So big. Okay. My next question is what does building genuine internal confidence actually look like in a teenager's daily life? And how is that different from just seeming confident on the outside? And I'm sure you can speak from this from a personal perspective because you've really done this work yourself, but also in the way that you're helping to support other teens do it too.
Yeah, I think confidence is an interesting question of like, well, how do you feel like you can do this and take this step and like not really be afraid? And the only way you can really do that is through reps. And you're still going to be afraid, but courage is actually the best skill to learn in this area because it's like despite being fearful, you're still being courageous and taking that next step. And it's unreasonable to say that you're not going to be afraid because fear is always there, and fear is also there to protect you. Fear is also there to keep you in that comfort zone, which is safer, arguably, in different ways, even if it's not healthy. And so building that courage is just like, even though I'm scared, even though I don't really want to do it, I'm going to do it. And it's just like executing and also not thinking too deeply about it. Like, if you told yourself that you're going to wake up in the morning and run a mile, then like putting out your running shoes, putting out like that outfit that you're going to wear. And like people have said this like so many times, but the reason why it works is because you're just not thinking, you're just doing. And that's why it's so powerful of just like over and over again gaining that reps. And then eventually your mind's going to change that belief of like, if I do this, then I will fail. And if I fail, then I won't be loved. And instead, it'll be like, I am still loved. And like, if I do this, it may suck in that short term, but long term, I'm building that skill and it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's so true for just all of our journeys, whether teenagers or adults. It's like anytime we want to grow, it's like we have to walk through that fear, do the thing scared, and do it scared repeatedly. And I love the analogy. I don't know if you ever read the book Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, but she talks about taking fear on a road trip because the whole book is about like really stepping into your creativity and not being afraid to put your art out into the world. And she talks about how that can be so scary because you're worried about being judged and all the things people will say and messing up and whatever it might be. And so she says, just think of it like taking fear on a road trip. Fear is going to be there with you the whole time, everywhere you go, all through this entire, road of life. So you take it on the road trip, but fear gets to sit in the back seat and it can't control the radio and it can't control the navigation system, but you're kind of like making friends with it because you're just kind of that recognition like, okay, it's going to be scary. It's going to be hard to take the next step in my growth journey every single time, but I'm going to do it anyway. And so come along for the ride, but I'm in charge. So I
Yeah,
love that.
I love that. That's so fun. And it's the coexisting emotions. It's like
Hmm.
you have that fear, but you also are excited. And also, fear and excitement are like the same trigger in the body. I think that's what it is. And so they're genuinely the same thing. It's just how you're using your language and how you're interpreting it. So you can also be like, well, this is actually excitement. And those like actual like impulses in my body are actually I'm just super excited for it. And so then it doesn't have to be fear, but it's like excited of the unknown.
Yeah, a completely different charge. Yeah, love that. Okay, I'm curious when teens do shut down or withdraw or constantly are seeking approval, what do you think is usually going on underneath the behavior that parents aren't seeing on the outside?
Yeah, I think one part, and this is usually a really big part of like most of the time it isn't the parent's fault. Most of the time it's the kid who's internalizing negative language and they're also experiencing their own life and they're struggling to really understand it and grasp it. And so like even if it's like maybe the parent influences how they feel, the best thing to do there is hold space and not like push, but it's like holding space. And what I mean by holding space is like being there for them, being like even if it's just like knocking on the door and being like, hey, like I'm here for you. Let me know if you need anything. I'm here to support you. Or like slipping a letter under their door and just like reminding them why you love them. And it's just like those little things of like them knowing that they have unconditional love and so much support from the people that they love, that's going to help them get through it. Because when they're shut down and when they're in an unhealthy space, it's usually because they don't feel like they belong or they don't feel loved or they feel very powerless. And just reminding them all the beautiful traits they have, all the love that they have from you is so powerful because this like over and over, and it has to be consistent. Like if the teen is shut down for multiple days, then consistently just holding space and like being very intentional about like knocking on that door and not pushing, but just being there is so powerful. And I was like talking to somebody the other day of like her and her husband like watch a movie every week on Sunday and they invite their kids every single week, and even if they say no, which they say no almost every time, like they're still gonna do it because they're just holding space and they're just reminding them that they're always invited and they're always wanted. And I think that's so beautiful and just like needed, because even though the kid's probably not going to come that day or the next day, one day they're going to come out and like sit down and be like, hey, can we talk? Or like, I'd love to do this with you. And it's just that over and over again of them not having to be fearful about what they're going to encounter with their parents, because even though they love them, I like, for me especially, I was like afraid of how they were going to react. And so that's why I shut down specific parts, or I didn't let them see everything, because I was afraid of like, oh, if you saw me happy, then and you knew like why I was happy, then you would take away that if I did something wrong. And so it's like that fear of losing things, but it's also that fear of not being loved. So I think there's
Mhm.
multiple different perspectives in that.
Yeah. Yeah, so what I'm really hearing is just like that steady, consistent presence over time, just like always putting those deposits in, like, hey, I'm here. And for me, like I love just doing like just little things when I see my kids shutting down or having a hard time. It's like they don't want to talk about it, but I can bring them a cup of hot tea, which, that just feels like soothing to them, or run a bath or put on a movie and just sit there and watch it with them,
Mm-hmm.
even though they don't want to talk about it, but like just being there present with them, like not scrolling on our phones, but just watching something together, rubbing their head or whatever. Just those little tiny touch points of like, hey, you don't have to talk about this, but I'm here. I'm here with you, and I'll make you a snack, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that. It's like those tiny acts of service that just remind
Hmm.
them that they're loved. And
Yeah.
that also like goes both ways, because like if you do that too, like I know like as a kid, like I would definitely do that. And like when my parents make me food, like sometimes I'll like make my mom coffee in the morning, and so it's reciprocal. But that built up consistency of just like reminding them that they're loved will help
Hmm.
a lot.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. I was just telling that to a mom just today that I was talking to, about, just parents worry a lot about their teens, and like worry if they're doing it right and all that kind of stuff. And I said, you know what? The most important thing is that you are steady, you're present, and they know you love them. Like, even if you're
Mm,
messing up and you're not doing it all right, if you just stay steady and present and show up with love, like that's the solid foundation. And we keep working and trying to do better in certain areas, but like if you've got that down, it's like they know that they have a safe place with you and that you're their person. And so that's a really good thing that you've got going. So,
yeah, I agree. And I'd also argue that it's good that they're not perfect. Like for a teen, it's very comforting to know that your parents aren't perfect, because like they're the two biggest influences in your life. And you think that they're like your superheroes, right? And they act perfect, and so you think that you have to be perfect as a byproduct of that. But when they show that when they're wrong and they apologize for their mistakes and they're vulnerable about the things that they struggle with or maybe didn't do perfectly, then they're able to realize that like it's okay if I make mistakes. It's okay and I don't have to be perfect, and they don't internalize that. And
mhm.
so that's like so wonderful, because then teens can like be vulnerable to their parents, and they can also see different sides of their parents that they wouldn't have seen previously.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Okay, awesome. How do you think parents can balance support and expectations? So, holding, giving them lots of support, but also having like the bar set high and having high expectations for their kids.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. David Yeager also says this really well of like, you want to have high support and high standards for your teens. And that's the best way for them to succeed. And it's like, first, it's like collaborating, right? What does support and standards look like? And you probably have like a base set of standards that you as a parent think are correct. And so it's like communicating these to your kid and being like, this is like what I think as standards, and I want to support you to get there. And then also, like, what do you think? As like, who do you want to become? Like, what high standards do you think you should have? And so it could be like, parents want all A's and B's, and the kid wants to, let's say, get into a really good college, and so they're like, this is what I want. And so then parents can work back and be like, okay, what standards can we create so I can support you in being consistent in this so we can get to the goal that you want. And so maybe that's being like maintaining a 95 or above, or maybe that's being like getting 1500 on your SAT. And so like high standards, that's a standard, and it's not just the goal, but it's like, okay, what are you doing day to day? What are you doing weekly to get you there? And the teen and parents sign off on this. And so it's like this collaborative technique of not just like one person giving it to the other. And like also goes into curfew of like, well, if you want to get to where your goal is, and let's like make sure you're going to bed at a good time, that kind of thing. And then it's like for each standard, asking them, and it could be like just a repetitive process of like, how can I support you with this? And maybe the teens like remind me, or like maybe like ask me if I need help, and just like for each standard reminding, like seeing like how you can support them best, and also researching like if my kid has a goal like this, how can I support them the best? And it's just like talking to them, making them communicate, helping them, reminding them, just the little things like that, maybe creating signs with them so they can put it up in their room and just like little reminders, that kind of thing, where it's just like you're collaborating because you also don't want to do it for them, right? Because if you do it for them, then they don't have any autonomy, and they also won't be able to do that when they're older. So it's that duality of doing both.
Nice. I love that. So good. Okay, yeah, I think that so many of us fall into the trap of like, doing all the things for them to the point where like they don't trust themselves. They don't feel that they're capable of doing the things themselves. And then they, get out in the world and they're like, oh crap, I don't know how to do this and I don't have the confidence to do it. And so, yeah, the collaboration part of, yeah, I'm here to support you, but I also believe in your capacity to do this. And, we can work on this together. It doesn't have to just be me handing you the answers here. So,
Totally.
yeah. Okay. What's a common thing parents do with the best intentions that actually creates more distance with their teen?
I think that we talked about this a little bit. So I would say trying to like first fix their teen. And I don't mean fix in the way that they think that their teen is broken, but it's like giving continuous instruction of like what they think is best. And if that's like, oh, like, did you sleep enough? Did you study enough? Like, kind of thing like that. And it's like parents are doing it because, like, I mean, they've lived a longer life than their teen, which is totally true, totally valid. And I'm not saying that the teen's right in this situation of the actions that they take, but it's like them like telling them what to do when the teens aren't ready for that. When the teen asks for advice, when they want advice, they're so much more like willing to do it. But arguably most of the time, the thing that's more valuable is asking them questions so then they get to the answer of their own, right? So it's like, for example, like I bombed my math test, and they need time to cool down, right? They need time to just like sit with that, and then they're like, and then you as a parent can be like, hey, like, I'd love to talk about it, so maybe we can come up with a plan so that doesn't happen again. Because I don't want you to ever feel that way, right? I want to help support you. And this is not up to your standard of like how you want to live your life. And so then it's like, okay, well, asking questions of like, what do you think went wrong? Maybe the teen's like, I don't know, like, I'm not really sure. And so then maybe you as a parent is like, do you think that you had enough sleep? Or do you think that you ate the right foods in the morning? And it's just like that question, even though you kind of know the answer, you're like asking the question so they can come to it on their own. And so then once they like are like, oh yeah, I probably could have slept more, and then you would even bring research into it. I don't know, like depending on your teen, how they like are moved by different arguments versus like emotion versus research versus like an authority, like mentor that they believe in kind of vibe of like a lot of successful people, right, have their very high standards. So then it could be like, Steve Jobs definitely would have studied for his test if he slept kind of vibe. So it really like depends on the teen, but it's like asking those questions so then they come to it themselves. And that goes for anybody of like, if the person comes up with the solution, then they're more likely to follow it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So ownership sounds like, yes, instead of telling them, asking them. Yeah, I love that. Okay. All right. And then if you had to give like your biggest message to teenagers who feel like nobody really gets them, like what would you say to teens today?
I would say that a lot of people think that. And considering the fact that a lot of people think that, it's probably not true, but also maybe you haven't given the chance to other people to allow them to connect with you, right? And that goes into like just like the little things of like going out and interacting with others, or even just smiling. Maybe the first step is just like smiling to strangers and like people, your classmates. And then the second step is like asking about, I talked about this technique in my last workshop called the Ford framework, where it's like first you talk about family and friends, and then you can talk about occupation or school, and then you can talk about recreational activities, interests, hobbies, and then like dreams. And so if you go through that framework, you have a really easy like knowing of like how to talk to somebody, and that's like so much easier because the truth is, like, you don't have to be interesting, you just have to be interested. And when you talk to somebody else and you create that connection, you're asking them questions, like, people feel seen. And when people feel seen, like, they feel so loved. And that's something that not a lot of people can do. And that's why questions are so valuable and truly listening. And when you can do that, then you create this connection with others that allows you to also feel connected to them.
Wow. I love that line. You don't have to be interesting, you just have to be interested. Because I think that's so, so many of the teenagers I work with, they come up against that where they don't feel like they have something to offer, or they have to like put on this show to like have people like them. And I try to tell them like, no, get curious about the other person. If we can be really good active listeners and ask great questions, it's like, it doesn't have to be about us. We don't have to be the star of the show. We can actually just be, wonderful listeners and really present with someone else. And then that builds that connection over time. So I love that.
Yeah, and it's crazy because they did this Harvard study where they found out, I think it's Harvard or Stanford, one of the studies, and they found out that when people talk about themselves, it activates the same center in their brain that is for like food, like eating really good food and like getting money. And so like they're literally feeling pleasured and rewarded by talking about themselves. Like people love talking about themselves. And so like just knowing that statistic, and like you can even test it, like people just love talking with themselves if you ask them a question. So
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I'm curious what's next for Cloud9 and for you personally in your life. Like, what do you have brewing here?
Yeah, so what's next for Cloud9 is we're starting up our social media very soon, and I'm super excited about that. It's going to be really fun. I'm doing beta test workshops right now so I can get as much feedback as possible. One of my favorite things about Cloud9 is that we're continuously getting feedback even after we've started our paid cohorts, so we can just make it as aligned to parents and teens, and so it's as interactive as possible. Considering the fact that it's on Zoom, a lot of people like hate that idea. Like I would hate that idea too. And so like making it interesting, making sure you can interact with others, and then you're also creating genuine connections at the same time. So right now, beta testing, and then releasing my paid cohort in the next month probably, which is very exciting, very nerve-wracking. And then after that, I want to create a course for parents and teens to really be able to master life skills and like supporting their teens, but in a gamified, like interactive way where they're genuinely like learning things and they're not like passively like clicking through a course kind of vibe.
So a lot more interactive and exciting than a lot of online platforms.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. That sounds so awesome. So right now, people are working with you, but in a different capacity, and it's about to kind of morph into something new, it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh. Okay, well, where would people find you? Like, how would they work with you or Cloud9 if they wanted to get themselves or their teenager connected?
Yeah, so Cloud9 Go, the number 9 go.com is our website, and then also on Instagram we also have a account which is Cloud9 Go. And both of those are great places to find us.
So cloud9go.com, you said,
Mm-hmm.
and then at cloud9go on Instagram.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Well, I feel like we had, just so many amazing different little conversations here today, but I'm wondering if there's just anything else that we didn't touch on that you would love to share today before we part.
I would say that I would agree. We talked about so many good things, and so like as a listener, like listening to podcasts is so powerful because you want to improve on yourself, and so the one thing that you should do is take one thing from this podcast you feel that you could implement or test and do it in the next week, preferably in the next day. And that would be such a win.
Totally. So actually putting it into action and not just letting it kind of pass through you.
Exactly.
Yes, I love that. So action oriented. So go out and do something. If you are a parent listening to this podcast today and you heard a little tidbit, a little gem of wisdom from Sonia that you can just incorporate into your parenting journey, or maybe you were a teen and you heard a tip around confidence or, putting yourself out there outside of your comfort zone or whatever it might be, that you grab hold of that and go do something with it today, because that's really what it is, right? We learn these things and it's actually the application that gets us to the next level in our own lives. So it's so awesome that, all these people that are listening have such a role model in, this beautiful young woman here who at 19 is making huge waves and using, everything that you've learned in your life as part of your gift and your giveaway, which I just think is so powerful, because I know for me in my life, it's like when you actually take what you've learned and you give it to someone else, it helps you to really have that spark and that passion and all of that. So I love seeing that. It's very inspirational to watch you. I was so inspired watching your TED Talk and just hearing, how articulate you are and just all the things that you've been putting your time and energy into. It's just really beautiful and inspiring. So thanks so much for being here. And I'm sure that all the people that are listening today are going to get a lot out of this conversation too. So really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, awesome. Did you enjoy the show? If so, would you take 30 seconds to subscribe so you don't miss an episode? Leave a quick review so more parents can find these conversations, and maybe even share this episode to your stories. And if you want to connect, please send me a DM on Instagram. I'm at jasmine.guidedpassages, and that's Jasmine with a Y. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll talk to you next week.